Welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK.
Hello. How are we all doing today?
Oh, good, mate. How are you?
I'm good. Oh, we've got a couple of people in just from the straight off the beginning. For the love of bees, Wayne Gardner. Hello. In there.
Wayne Gardner always wins, doesn't
he?
he? Wayne Gardner always wins.
We need to start a leaderboard, I think.
You know who that is, don't you?
Who's
Clive?
For the love of bees?
That's Clive.
Clive.
And he's obviously started a YouTube channel. Ooh, interesting.
There we go. Go and check that out, guys and gals. For all for the love of bees. Anyway, how's your week been? How have you been?
What have I done this week? Actually took a day off on Wednesday.
I know.
Took the bands to the Metro Centre. It was more stressful than being at work. Max was not wanting to go into any shop. He was wanting to climb on everything. Things that you shouldn't be climbing on, displays, stands. He hid a couple of times when, as soon as he's lost eye contact, where you'll hide in the stands and he won't fucking move.
We've all done that as kids, though, haven't we?
Oh, mate, he does it all the time. Like, it's got to a point now in the house where when we've lost him, you don't even panic. He got out. About 2 weeks ago. He got out the front door for the first time. Carly thought he was with me. I thought he was with her. She shouts down, "Why is the front door wide open?" Nobody can find him. Nobody. So I'm in my stocking feet running around the streets. I've told Matthew to go to his nana's in case he's headed that way. Bear in mind, he's only 2.5. By the time Matthew's got to his nana's, he's crying because he's upset because we think we've lost Max. She's flying around. I'm flying around. And when you can hear that panic in someone's voice. And then I just got a phone call saying, I've got him. He'd walked out and he'd hid in the bushes in the front garden when we were screaming and shouting for however long. He'd sat quiet. And the only reason she found him is because in her desperation shouted, "Do you want some sweets?" And she said this little voice go, "Yes." And out he popped.
I mean, that's awful. But I have to say, I remember I remember doing that as a kid in the SeaWorld Centre in Portsmouth, hiding from my folks. And the irony is years later, my nephew Jacob, my brother's son, also did the same thing. And Ben was just like, he was on the verge of like phoning the police and being like, "Oh, I've lost my child." And he turned around and there was a set of curtains, and he just saw a couple of feet poking out from underneath it. It was just like, "Mother."
Yeah. It's stressful, but honestly, when we lose him now, it's not even. There was one day you hid in the cage with a dog, and you couldn't see him for looking at it, if that makes sense, because he was actually should have been something in the cage, and you're flying around, but he'll hide in the cupboards, and he'll like literally get in, pull the clothes over him, and he'll sit there for 20, 25 minutes, half an hour without moving, without making a sound, listening to you scream and shout for him, and then eventually you're like, you've got to fingertip search your way through the house looking for him. Then eventually you find he's like,
job as a military sniper in his future, I think, coming up.
Absolutely. He's class. And how's your week been?
It's been very, very good. I've had a lot to do. I've been getting over the jet lag, but I've been harnessing the power of jet lag to my advantage and being quite a productive little bunny. And I think I said last time, we've doing a lot of work around these mega sort of like sites, these very different sites out away from the UK. So a lot of mental runtime going into figuring out how to control rats on a colossal scale in areas which are so alien to what we would consider in the UK. So yeah, really been getting my teeth into that, which has been fantastic.
That's going to be interesting for you. I've had some phone calls this week, by chance, not on purpose, but by chance, from a number of different people. Here's my tip: if you want to be constructive in the pest control industry, look for different solutions that are not currently available to behavioural resistant mice, because it would appear that as we go more and more down the auditing route for companies, where everything needs to be done to a system and less needs to be done on skill, that pest controllers are not being allowed to use their skill, which is leaving us in horrible positions, you know. So if you can come up with something suitable, and we're trialing a couple of things at the minute, different things. I think there's a massive market there for the right product, the right whatever it is. Do something. Yeah, do something. Yeah, and this 74 Asian hornets nests, we're finding about 10 a week, and they're finding all over. We've had a couple in London now, Ilford, I think it was, and there's loads more on the south coast. And every time they release it, they say, and we are looking at other sightings. We're starting to see them turn up on pest control sites. People are finding them randomly now, aren't they? But yeah, let's see.
It's interesting. Sorry, just while you go and find that, with the Asian hornets. So for those who are listening back, we've just had a comment saying, not being long now, as of 21st of August, 74 Asian hornet nests confirmed. Now, I haven't seen any Asian hornets personally, but for the first time this year, I have had 2 European hornet nest sites on the same site. One of them is inside the roof of my little labs up on the farm, and the other one, hilariously enough, is probably about 100 meters away in the forester's shed. Now, and that is a big nest hanging directly down from the middle of the ceiling in the forester's shed. And I went in the other day to see the forester because he's a lovely guy. I was like, "Hey, mate, how you doing?" And I looked up and I was like, "Christ, how are you working in here with that literally like 6 feet above your head?" And he's like, "What?" I was like, "That, Simon, that." And he looked up and it's a beach ball hornet nest just hanging above his head. And this guy's like, "You know what? I'd never noticed that." Ow. Okay. But of course, it's because he's a forester. He's got a pair of ear defenders on, which have like a radio in. So he's constantly just wandering around, like listening to his book and the rest of it. So he's not noticed what sounds like the inside of a Chinook helicopter just dangling 6 feet above his head. But I've never seen hornets on this site before in 5 years, and then this year, 2 nests within 100 meters of each other. Actually, I think if I look probably a bit more, I'll probably find another couple of nests in the thickets and hedgerows around. So it's been a really big year for Hymenoptera, I think, full stop. Wasps, hornets, Asian hornets, as we can see there. So interesting.
That's an interesting one. Listen to this, though. Staff from the MBU and the GB non-native species I can't pronounce it, have been providing advice and support to officials in Ireland following the confirmed sighting of a yellow-leg hornet in the Cork area. And it just probably makes me giggle. It's like, so you've lost control of this country, yeah? So you think you're going to tell Ireland how they should do it, yeah? Are you going to tell them to do anything different to what you've done? Nope. You're going to tell them to use kill traps and bang them out now? Nope. What are you going to tell them to do? Exactly what we did, but you lost control. Please don't do that. Like, if you listen to them, you did the same thing that they did on Jersey, the same thing they did on France, the same thing they did everywhere else. That's lost control. Yeah, don't worry, we're going to tell them to do the same thing as us. What do you think the outcome's going to be? You're going to lose control. Guaranteed, 100%. Game over, job done. See you later.
I think we definitely do need to get some more clarification from the powers that be as to where we as professionals stand with being able to treat Asian hornets.
We can. They are not a recorded. They're not a notifiable species. We are absolutely 110% allowed to treat them. As long as we have the correct. As long as we have the correct training and the correct what you call it. You could even Anyways, they've asked us not to so that they can deal with them because they want to be the experts. Bear in mind, their training happened after they'd arrived and they'd done a half a day kill gym training on killing wasp nests. But so we can do them but at the minute, and I don't expect anyone to do them, just tell them, because the faster they lose control, the quicker they'll hand it over to us. And I reckon it's 200 nests, so we've got to be close to that this year at 10 a week, haven't we? Till they start cooling down. But yeah, it's coming, in it. It's coming. Oh, sorry, I'm taking up a little bit too much time. Guess what else I had to play with this week?
I'm going to brand new bit of hardware, so I'm going to say it's either going to be a new bit of drone equipment, or camera equipment, or thermal equipment, or
camera, not thermal.
Oh, is this the sound camera that you were talking about before?
The acoustics, yeah, the acoustics. Yeah. Took it out, and it doesn't pick things up behind walls, but at about 15 meters, pointing it at the entrance of a honeybee colony, that was not very visible. It certainly put that spot bang on that entrance point. So, do I think it has a place in today's? No, probably not. If we start having to look for Asian hornets' nests, would it have a place? I would imagine absolutely, definitely so. Yeah.
That could be interesting, yeah, especially if you're looking sort of like not having to look through things, but looking through foliage. Anyway,
Yeah, exactly.
talking of new technologies, let's actually flip this on its head, and let's take a little bit of let's take a journey back in time, shall we? And speak to a gentleman who has seen pest management over the last, I don't know, 4-5 decades. And get some real insight as to, are the challenges we're seeing today unique to us, or have there been challenges to pest management the entire time it's been around? But without further ado, let me introduce you to the stage. Iain, how you doing, Iain?
Okay, hello.
So for those who don't know you, because I've met you and know you, but there'll probably be many who have not met you or don't remember you from your time at the NPTA. So with that, could you give us just a little bit of an introduction? Let everyone know who you are.
Okay, my name is Iain Turner. It's 50 years almost to the day that I joined the pest control industry. My wife and I got on a plane and we flew to the South Pacific and joined the Papua New Guinea malaria control department, where I was a field entomologist, working out in the villages, catching mosquitoes and getting malaria and things like that. So I did that for 2 years. And then I came back and did a master's degree in applied entomology at Imperial College. And then I went in and became a scientist at the Wellcome Research Labs, who had recently got the license to develop permethrin and deltamethrin, newfangled insecticides that were invented in 1975. I mean, the 70s was just a great decade. Let's not forget the music that came from that decade. But we also had bendiacarb was invented by a British company in 1971.
Which one?
Sorry, bendiacarb. Ficam.
Who invented it?
That was Fison's UK Limited. Okay. Right. They then became FBC, and then like a lot of things in this industry, they got bought up by somebody else. Then there was in the mid 70s the permethrin, deltamethrin, cypermethrin. They were invented down at Rothamsted Labs, and the Wellcome Foundation, which I work for, got the go-ahead to develop products for 2 of those. And then in the late 70s, we had Malcolm Hadler up at Shell inventing difenicum and brodificum. So a fantastic decade for producing the insecticides or rodenticides that we've been using for so long. And so it's with great sadness to see the end of Ficam D, but like all products, it had a life cycle, just like all living things. They're born, they grow up, and then they fade away and die. And bendiacarb is just one of those. And it's sad to see it go because it was such a useful product, but that's the way of the world. So there have been an awful lot of insecticides and rodenticides which have gone the same way. I mean, 1986 was a key date in the industry's life, wasn't it? With the introduction of the control of pesticides regulations. And that brought about the demise of a large number, all at once, of organochlorine and organophosphorus products, which people have been using for years. One of the best used products was chlordane ant spray, which was, like all the organochlorines, was very persistent. So a lot of pest controllers, they were selling the annual ant spray contract to householders because they knew it would last for at least a year. And so that was a cornerstone of their business model, just like Ficam D became a cornerstone of the business models of lots of pest controllers. You know, a couple of puffs and £100, madam, thank you very much. That's gone. But pest controllers have got to adapt. They've got to change. They've got to work with the tools that they've got. And that's the great strength of pest controllers, is they are problem solvers. So
Yes.
you know, we've got to remember that. And yes, other products will go, just as many have gone before. And you've got to adapt and get your act together and change your business models if necessary. Okay, that's my rant to begin with.
Nothing better than starting the podcast with a rant. That's absolutely wonderful. And I think a lot of people think that the loss of products is by virtue of the fact we're losing the good ones and being left with the terrible ones. But the reality is, as you said, it's just a life cycle. And in fact, we're having probably as many good products coming in through the back as we are losing, you know, products that we are familiar with, let's say, day to day. It's nothing novel. It's just part of the great circle of life. I'm going to go break into you know, the Lion King here and start going Hakuna Matata in a minute. But it is just part of the circle of product life at the end of the day. And you know, as you say, there was some fantastic products before, but also there was probably equally a number of products that were not great for people, applicators, or the environment, probably in equal measures, which went. So there we go. But it's all very interesting.
Well, hang on 1 second. On that point, what's the naughtiest chemical that we had that was openly available? I know you've got your different gases and stuff like that. That would literally, it's going to roll you over if you smell it. I mean, what was the one that probably would would really make us worry that we weren't using correctly, if that makes sense?
Strychnine for moles.
Right.
You never used that?
I've only ever trapped moles. I've never ever done anything other than trap them.
Okay.
I'm aware of strychnine for different things, but I've never used it for moles. No.
Well, it's a dreadful poison. It causes animals that eat it to bend their spine back until it breaks, basically. But you know, it used to be used for foxes and other animals, but then it was left for the moles because the moles die underground, so we can't see their agony. But that's what used to be used against moles quite a lot.
Comes from the plant Strictovomicus, not technically a poison. It's more of a salt. Yeah, and people believe it's called strychnine because of the terminology to strike 9, that it kills 9 times, but it's not true. It comes from the plant that it comes from, Strictovomicus. Hey,
there you go.
Hey,
not a lot of people know that.
I'm not as thick as I look. I'm not as thick as I look.
And the mode of action of which it kills is it causes all of your peripheral musculature to contract simultaneously. So and all of the muscles in our body, with the exception of your tongue and very few others, are antagonistic. You have a primary and a secondary. So you've got your bicep to contract, you've got your triceps to extend. But if they both go at the same time, then the primary will win out, and it'll end up sort of like eviscerating, quite literally, all of your musculature, which is not great when it comes to your skeletal muscles. It's even worse when it comes to those that are surrounding your like spine and the rest of it. And it's why you die with this rictitious grin on your face, literally the rictors, a great big smiling, grinning face, because all of the muscles around your cheeks pull up to your eyeballs.
Someone,
and you end up having this great big smile.
you might be able to answer this, Iain. I've been told, and I don't know if this is true or not, that strychnine is still licensed in this country, but it would only be licensed for foxes if there was a rabies outbreak, and they would be allowed to use it. And the idea is that bear in mind, this is what I've been told on the grapevine, so it's probably a load of rubbish. This is what I've been told, that you would bury the meat, shallow bury it, and that foxes and scavengers out in the country would pick it up and it would kill them, and they would use it to try and slow and deter that. Does that sound about right or not?
I have no idea, to be honest.
No, neither do I.
I would be pretty doubtful, to be honest, because it's such a dangerous chemical.
Right.
I would say that's a no, because there is a specific bit of legislation which prohibits the use of any poisons against foxes, which is, and it's a specific bit of legislation. It is something like not the Cruel Poisons Act, but I'm trying to remember what it is. It'll come to me in a bit. So I doubt that that's the case. There may be special dispensation for outbreaks of rabies, but I don't believe it'll be strychnine. It'll probably be a much more contemporary chemical that they used at that point. Yes, Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happened there.
But yeah, I mean, talking this, I would say if I was to pick one of the ones that went and which was not good fun, things like zinc phosphide, which is still used globally quite a lot, but that is a fairly scary, and it's not even particularly effective because it's an acute poison, so you tend to get fairly poor control out of it unless you heavily prebate first. But there was no antidote. And if anything ate that, it was game over, ranging from brown rats to beluga whales, and that was a scary one. But you could argue that was very effective because of that reason. But I was not sad to see the back of that one, I have to say. Absolutely. So, Iain, tell us, 5 decades. What did you do before pest management? What was life before? How did you actually, what was it that prompted you to go and solve the world's malaria crisis out in the Guineas?
Well, I was a freshly graduated zoology student, and the bit that I got my most interest was vector-borne diseases. These lovely complex diseases involving vertebrates and invertebrates. And I just got lucky. I got this opportunity to go to PNG to just basically help them with their malaria. It was a pre-treatment time, so we weren't treating, but we were just finding out about the disease in that country and the vectors concerned, and finding out because malaria only occurs where the Anopheles mosquito can actually live, and in Papua New Guinea you've got a large proportion of the human population who are living in the highlands, and they weren't troubled by malaria, whereas the poor people living by the beach or in the swamp, they suffered badly. But the problem is that when you get susceptible people like Europeans or people from the highlands of New Guinea going down into the lowlands, they were picking up malaria, and they had all 4 species of human malaria there. So I caught it. I didn't realize I had it until I came back to the UK, and I stopped taking my chloroquine tablets, which were the prophylactics, which you took 1 a week. I stopped taking them when we came back, and then I started getting night sweats, and so I thought, hang on a minute. And fortunately, I had there was a colleague who was studying malaria, so I said, could you give me a glass slide and a pin, and I'll take a blood sample. And he saw it was malaria, but they couldn't identify it. But so I ended up for a treatment at the London School of Tropical Medicine, and they cured it. So the people sometimes say, "Oh yeah, you once you get malaria, that's it. You've got it for the rest of your life." That's not true, thankfully.
You'd be interested to know, because if you are, following the vector controls, they found recently that chlorpyrifos, which they use for control of Anopheles mosquitoes, they found that actually chlorpyrifos, when female mosquitoes land on it and it absorbs into their body, if it doesn't kill them, it also has an irreversibly damaging effect on the plasmodium, which the malaria needs to survive. So actually, it stops them being able to transmit malaria. So they're finding that some of these bed nets with old technology in them are having a double whammy. They're not just killing the mosquitoes, but they're also, the ones that they don't kill, they are stopping being able to actually transmit malaria downstream. So, and that was something they've recently sort of isolated and figured out, which is really, really cool. Hugh Radford is asking Ian, does malaria come back once you've caught it?
Well, there are 4 species of human malaria. 3 do come back, and the 4th one kills you. So I'd rather have one of the 3 that is a recurring form. But as I said, you can be cured of it as well. If it goes and hides in the liver, and comes out, and it's wonderfully adapted because it comes out as a night sweat, in night fever, just when the mosquitoes are feeding, so that you've shown like a beacon to them. They say, "Oh, it's nice and hot," and that's when all the malaria organisms are circulating in your blood, ready to be drunken up by a mosquito. And of course, we've got malaria. We've had malaria in this country. It was one of the many things the Romans gave us. But we've got Anopheles mosquitoes in the south of the country, probably making their way up north as we speak. So we got the mosquitoes, and of course people do come back from tropical countries with malaria, and we occasionally get outbreaks of malaria which have been transmitted in this country, but that's very, very rare.
It always leads me to the question, and I don't know if you can monitor it or not. Did the mosquitoes suffer, change, or alter any of their behaviours or physiology when they are the carriers of malaria or not?
Well, you'd think so, because it does affect their salivary glands and it affects their ovaries. That's what we were doing, was we were catching mosquitoes and dissecting them underneath a binocular microscope. And you can see the malaria parasites in the mosquito, and they're quite large compared to the mosquito itself. So you'd think that there would be an effect, but whether it makes them more likely to feed on infected people, yes, I would say so, because they are warmer because of the fever.
Yeah, all of these things have a fairly intricate lifestyle. The one that fascinates me the most is, have you ever heard of Toxarum?
Yeah, another one.
Yeah, I can't do it now. Let me just Google it. I can't say it. Gondii. Toxoplasmosis gondii. There we go. And it lives usually in mice, but it gets into the brains of mice. And when it gets into the brains of mice, it actually dampens their fear response to predators. So they become less likely to avoid cats. So of course, cats snaffle them up, and then they move through the intestines of cats, where they then create cysts in these cysts in the feces, which then move into water through the cat feces, live in the water. Mouse comes along, drinks the water, gets into the mouse, gets into the brain. Mouse runs up, eat me. And so some of these diseases are phenomenal in the ability to affect their hosts in weird ways, because this animal's like a single cellular thing. You wouldn't think that it would have it wouldn't have the capacity in its mind to figure out, I'm going to make this mouse run off and go and get eaten. But millions of years of trial and error over billions of mice has done this thing. So nature's crazy.
Yeah.
It's really good fun. And to be fair, to take this back to a pest management bed, it's probably what makes it so interesting, isn't it? Because it is so adaptable. And Sean was only talking very early on about behavioral resistance and the changes in the behavior of the animals that we're dealing with. And I believe I'm not wrong in saying, so I remember talking to you down at Church Farm about this, that you had some experience with the behaviourally resistant mice up in the Birmingham bull rig. Did you not? Am I right in remembering that?
Yes, the company I worked for certainly did, yes. They spread throughout the country, thanks to 99p stores, because their warehouse, which was somewhere down south, was overrun with the damn things, and they were being transported to all the other 99p stores around the country. And we had problems in Stoke and places. And if that's Clive Stewart, then he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Yes.
Yeah, we've actually got the pest controller on who did the 99p stores at Birmingham. So, Clive, you are to blame.
But yes, so talking of sort of like products, the whole behavioral resistance thing, we had some fairly sort of like novel tools at our disposal to be able to control the behavioral resistance mice at the time, because we had access to liquid concentrates, didn't we? That was one of the things that we had, and then disappeared with when we actually went from COPR to BPR. That was in the second change of regulatory kerfuffle. But we used to be able to get liquid concentrate, and you could mix it with anything you like, cornflakes to dog biscuits, so long as you were responsible with it. But you were able to then, I think, what was the solution? It was a lot of people used tuna flakes, I believe, wasn't it, to try and get around this amylase deficient mouse in Birmingham. So what do we do nowadays? How do we get around that? What's the solution, guys?
Glue boards.
Glue boards, indeed. Yeah. Under license, of course, ladies and gentlemen.
Of course.
Of course. So
here's a question for you, Ian. If you're thinking about behavioural resistance, knowing that we've lost glue boards and we've lost this and we've lost that, with your years of pest control, what would your approach be to them now?
For what? Sorry, for resistant mice?
Behavioural resistant mice, yeah.
Oh, find another job. They're a real problem, and the powers that be have not listened to us when we say we need to have these tools to be able to deal with this growing problem. No doubt there's somebody working on laser, AI-activated laser guns, which operate in these areas. Colin Smith is probably developing it even as we speak. So it's a real problem. If they won't eat the bait that is provided for us, what do you do? Over to you, gentlemen.
So I've always said with behavioral resistance, you've got to understand what makes that animal a superhero, what's making it supernaturally resistant to what you're doing. And then don't do that thing. So if they're becoming behaviorally resistant to plastic, don't try and force plastic upon them. If they're becoming behaviorally resistant because they're not eating carbohydrates, find a solution that is not dependent on carbohydrates, even if that means trapping using, wooden traps and pepperoni on them. So realize what it is, because again, behavior resistance is a catch-all umbrella. We're very good at creating sort of like very broad terminologies in pest management and then just lumping a whole load of woe under that umbrella. Classic example being neophobia, a fear of new objects, but it's actually a fear of new spaces, a fear of the boxes, a fear of the food. All of this was just sort of like fear, and we call it neophobia. And the same with behavior resistance. It can be an avoidance of carbohydrates, an avoidance of plastic, an avoidance of So we need to understand what that actual sort of like reason is, and then it becomes very easy. Because if I say I've got a mouse here and it won't touch plastic, how do you kill it? You'd be like, I can think of 100 ways to kill a mouse that doesn't want to touch plastic without using plastic. And suddenly the problem doesn't become so bad anymore. It's in my opinion. Sean, you might have a different one, but that's where I sit with all of these things. You're going to just close your mouth. Cool.
No, we're looking at something at the minute which is working. Whether we can make it commercially viable or not, I don't know. But yeah, we've certainly. I just feel like those. What is it? It was Darwin, wasn't it? Who said it's not the biggest and strongest to survive, but the first to adapt. That's why silverback gorillas are going extinct and amoeba will keep going in it because or whatever it is. But yeah, I think that it's an area of pest control where if the right person with the ability to put the documentation, the evidence together could very quickly make a big name for themselves talking about stuff like that. I don't know why, and you might disagree with us, but it seems like it's something that's been almost shied away from for some time. But I feel like it's going to come to the forefront with, like I said earlier, the conversations I've had in the last 2 weeks about it, basically what's happening is these big contracts, national contracts, are wanting bait and traps put in boxes and and all this sort of jazz, everything that doesn't work. But they're almost wanting the cake and eating it. So how do you, if you can get your thinking caps on, because the auditors are never, ever, ever going to turn around and go, I love the way I call it scruffy pest control for behavioural resistant mice, don't I? And they're never going to take that. It's not going to happen. So how do you turn that scruffy pest control clean and tidy? I don't know, but yeah, it doesn't work.
You give it a name,
does it?
You give it a name. So I'm about to say this. No, I could wax lyrical and get on with this for quite some
come
time,
on,
yeah.
Another night.
So Iain, tell us, because I think probably most people remember you most fondly as your time with the NPTA. So should we talk about that for a bit? I mean, when did you join the NPTA?
I was with them for about 20 years. So winding back from when I sort of retired, I stepped down from the NPTA in 2020, just before COVID hit. So it was about 15 to 20 years. I can't remember the exact length of time, but I've long done charity work alongside whatever I've been working. And I've always found that it gives you another dimension to your life. And certainly with the NPTA, I was doing a lot of training, doing a lot of auditing, going around the country, meeting pest controllers all the way around the country. I remember there was one week I went up to the Orkney Islands to meet one of our members up there. And then the next week I was down in the Isle of Wight. So, the length and breadth of the country. And seeing that pest controllers did things slightly different all over the country. And it was fascinating seeing how they did things differently. So, yes, and getting involved with government meetings, trying to persuade them that we actually knew what we were talking about. I remember going to a crew meeting, and there were 40 odd people in the room, very, very cozy. And there were 3 of us from the pest control industry, guy from BPCA, guy from the environmental health people, and myself. And we were the only ones really who probably actually ever got our hands and knees dirty chasing these creatures. And everybody else was a civil servant or a manufacturer or somebody who knew the theory, but had never actually got it down and dirty and done the practical. So that was interesting, piping up in that sort of company, sort of saying, excuse me, that's not actually going to work if you do that. And then trying to explain why it wasn't going to work. So, that was the interesting bit of that. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I found with the NPTA is you're involved with aspects of pest control which you wouldn't otherwise be involved with, and it broadens your outlook. And I'm very pleased that I pushed Hugh Radford to join as a director, because I'm sure he will gain from it.
Yeah. It's a different world when you have to say, when you step step up that next, that next little sort of like elevation, and you do sort of like get a bit more engaged with your trade associations, how the landscape and how your understanding of our industry changes when you start to be able to see what's happening necessarily outside your bubble that is forcing these changes to our industry. And as you say, sometimes it's people with all the best intentions with the world, but not the right knowledge, or they're not being given the correct steerage, because they simply just don't know where to look. And that's why it's important to have folks like yourself and now Hugh and others who are on our trade associations to guide and advise. But it's a different world, isn't it? And it can be sometimes quite frustrating when you see all of these other complications compounding our lives.
Well, of course, the industry is made up of three main groups, isn't it? There's the manufacturers, there's the pest control technicians, and there's the group in the middle, the suppliers, distributors. And they all have their own aims and so forth. And it's very easy for technicians to not understand the pressures that are on the manufacturers. You think, well, why have they just withdrawn that product? Has it been banned? No, it's because the company concerned has done the maths and they've worked out that it's simply not profitable enough for them to continue to support it, because supporting these products costs a hell of a lot of money. And that's what happens. And they look, what are our sales? Well, that's not going to be very good in a year or two. So we'll get rid of it. And it's brutal, but that's the way it works. It's the same as, if you've got a wasp nest that's sort of 50 miles away, you could spend a lot of time and effort going to get that one wasp nest. But if it's out of your area, there's no point, because it's not going to be profitable.
Do you think that mindset from the manufacturers could be transferred to the one-man bands, where it's like, I don't know, say you get 3 mole jobs a year, like, what's the point in having that kit? Like, scrap it off and just say, sorry, don't do it. Because I think we like to be a jack of all trades, master of none. But do you think if they became not more specialized, but more concentrated on particular services, that one-man bands would be better or worse off?
I'm not sure I understand your question there.
So you say, for instance, I do 5 cockroach jobs in every 2 years. I do 2 cockroach jobs a year. Is it worthwhile, do you think, carrying that gear and offering that as a service? Or do you think a one-man band, if we went down the chemical manufacturer's route of that's not really bringing in the work, it's not worth buying the 4 tubes of Goliath and and doing all that sort of stuff? Would we be better off focusing our services, so saying, listen, we do rats, mice, wasps and something else where the money is, and shooting for that? Or do you think one-man bands are better off having a wider spread of services that they offer so they don't miss out on work?
Well, I know some very, very successful one-man bands who have focused on doing one thing. Maybe it's mold control, and they get very good at it, and they focus on that, and they get the business sufficient business to keep them going. Most are just sort of generalists, aren't they? They sort of say, well, we'll deal with any pest that you've got. And then you've got to know what you're doing in all manner of different pests. And you've got to carry the gear to deal with it. Although nowadays, if you just ring up your supplier and you say, I need this tomorrow, you'll get it, usually. I think the more successful companies do tend to specialize, but they also diversify as well. So that, I never got involved with doing drain work, but I know there's some very successful people who are focusing on drain and rat control in drains, for instance. So, Clive Stewart is focusing on his bees. There we go. He's making a real go of that, and who would have thought just a few years ago that you could make a decent living just simply dealing with bees? Perhaps the next best thing is live removal of wasps. I've seen that people
it has already been offered.
Because that's
What's your thoughts on that?
that's what customers want, isn't it? They want their pests removed, but don't harm them.
I'm not great at that, Ian.
It was there was an interesting statistic came out a little while back. So New Zealand is going through this Predator-Free 2050 campaign where they are trying to remove all predators from New Zealand and bring it back to just exclusively the natural or native wildlife, should I say. And with that, they've actually put a lot of money into innovation, they've put a lot of money into development, but what they've also done is put a lot of money into training. So there is actually government-backed pest management training courses specifically aimed at getting a lot of people into the industry from all groups and walks of life. And a lot of they get them to do an exit interview on the way out. You know, when you finish your course, just here's 20 questions, and one of them is, are you, would you use traps over chemical traps? You know, just getting a gauge for people's level of response. And overwhelmingly, the younger generations coming through, the newer pest controllers, all want to do green inverted commas pest management. They want to do low impact chemical free pest management over using chemicals, which is a dichotomy to the existing pest management community, which are very reliant on their chemical controls and know how to use them and big fans of them. And so with that, it is showing that there is a shift and a change in culture and opinion and attitude. And you're right, should we steadfastly hold to our guns, or shall we preserve the places for these tools as and when they're needed, or do we pander to the people who do want our wasp nest removed and taken to a hedgerow and used to pollinate and depopulate a field of corn of its pests? It sounds ridiculous, but if that's what people want, then is it so mad? If you could figure out how to do it cost effectively?
It's basic marketing. You find out what your customers want and you give them that.
Yeah. And yes, it's a knee-jerk reaction that we have. Sorry.
Yeah, it was just interesting. I was just reading an article just the other day that New Zealand, I think, is the only country in the world that still uses 1080 as a rodenticide, and they use it wildly. For those who don't know of it, it's a very old rodenticide that disappeared long before 1975 from this country, but it's still used in certainly in New Zealand.
I think as well as it's used in Australia, it's a sodium fluoroacetate, which is, and the way they used to use it, I believe, for dingo control and things like that. And what you do is you get a vial of 1080 or sodium fluoroacetate, and you get a vial of it, and you put a spring underneath with a little percussion cap beneath that, and you put the vial in, you drill it into the floor, and you put a slab of meat over the top. So when you lift the slab of meat up, the percussion cap slammed into the bottom of this vial, and it basically ejected at near, supersonic speeds, bits of smashed glass and sodium fluoroacetate into the face, into the mouth of the dingo. And bingo, you're a goner. Yeah, you can imagine doing that in the UK, can't you? What are you doing in my garden? Landmines? Don't worry about this. Careful with the lawnmower, though. It'll ruin your day. There we go. It's, again, as you say, it's changes on.
Just out of questioning, and I'm not suggesting that I'll do this. If I did it in the kitchen with a box of dairy milk, what result would I get?
I call from child services, probably.
Class. Yeah. Question.
But yeah,
this is what I want to know: bed bugs. Because you were probably, when you first started, they were probably unheard of, or were they common?
No, they were quite rare. DDT had been widely used and wiped out most of the bed bugs in the country. And certainly when I first got into the service side, which was with Peter Cox in Stockport, we hardly ever came across any bed bugs. And then when I ended up in Alpha just before I retired, we were forever going across to Blackpool and places, and and dealing with them over there because of the great rise in the number of bed bugs that had taken over the last few years. I hate bed bugs because you're always afraid of taking them home with you, aren't you? So, yeah, I mean, we could still get on top of them, but we just have to be very careful and use the right mix of control methods. I'm a big fan of diatomaceous earth, and get that into every crack and crevice you can. But you have to use the other more conventional insecticides for treating the mattresses, etc. And yeah, old people's homes. I shouldn't say it because I'll probably end up there, but they're the worst places for bed bugs. Because there's particular ones where they allow the inmates to bring furniture into their rooms, and if I had one care home where there were about 20 rooms affected. Absolute terrible job to get on top of.
It was quite interesting because I remember reading some statistics from the Chartered Institute of Environmental Health that we have had bed bugs, dotting about in the UK for a long time, and they tend to sort of like focus around big population hubs. But after the end of the Second World War, we had quite a significant dip for a couple of reasons, which was we had number one, a lot of the real estate that bed bugs love to sit and live in got pancaked, and so there was a distinct lack of beds for both human beings and bed bugs. And also, it kind of really a lot of people left the UK, and then we had them come back, but people stopped moving around the UK so much, there wasn't so much travel. And we also had the advent, not so long after that, of DDT. And we then sort of like used, and that was for cockroaches, you sprayed it everywhere, and so a lot of animals got caught in the crossfire. And then we started to see a bit of a resurgence when the economies recovered after the Second World War. The advent of commercialized air travel became a reality, not just for the rich and famous, but for the working person as well. And we also, the invention of the cockroach gel really screwed up bedbug control for a while, because instead of just spraying DDT or spraying sort of like pyrethroids around to control cockroaches and coincidentally getting bedbug infestations when they're in their infancy, it stopped catching them in the crossfire. And so suddenly these populations are allowed to thrive and move and survive. And we got a real resurgence around about, I think it was the late 60s, 70s, they started to really pick up. And you can see on the Chartered Institute, it's this sort of like really interesting ebb and flow. But every year the peak gets a little higher and a little higher until you get to 2020. And it's, with the London Olympics through the roof, went absolutely, batshit crazy, which was something.
I've just had a contentious message off someone. I'll keep the post that to me, Salatis, to which they replied, bollocks, it's immigration. Thoughts?
Movement from other countries does bring bed bugs in and out, but I wouldn't specifically put it to immigration, because bed bugs don't discriminate between the rich, the poor. They don't discriminate between race. They hitchhike on anyone that moves. You're as likely to bring bed bugs back with your sort of like middle class family who sent their twin darlings off to go backpacking around Belize, as you are to have someone bring it over in any other way. So although, there is going to be an element of people, and they might have a higher incidence, we can't blame all bed bugs on immigration, just simply migration of human beings.
Absolutely,
yeah. And then the other one I've been told to ask you about is organophosphates.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go on. Tell it. I'll probably get the chance to use maybe one or two. Organophosphates are in Strike, and they are in it's a quartz powder that we might have a look at. For someone who's never used one, doesn't know anything about them, what's the difference? What do we need to do? What do we need to worry about? How did they come about? Give her your rundown on organophosphates.
Well, there were some great ones. Things like malathion and phenitrathion, widely used in this industry. the one problem we had with Fenitrothion is that it had a tendency to discolor light-colored surfaces, like painted white. I'm trying kickboards and things like this, but it used to go also for white marble. So if you had a nice stately house with ornate white marble fireplace, and you sprayed Fenitrothion across the bottom, wall junction, it turned it bright yellow, and that was expensive to get rid of. We had when I was with Welcome, we had a lovely product called multi-spray. And pest controllers, that's all they needed in their van, because this stuff could do anything. You could use it as a space spray, fog, mist, and you could use it as a surface spray. And it contained, I think at one stage it was lindane, Fenitrothion, and natural pyrethrin, so a lovely mix of everything that was going. But the problem was that you had to keep it away from white plastic surfaces, particularly, because it melted white plastic and it turned it yellow. So all these people with their nice white conservatories, we would say on the label, do not spray plastic, keep away from light colored surfaces. And of course we get this sort of steady stream of people saying, well, I sprayed it and it melted this conservatory. And we would say, did you read the label? So one of the important reasons why you should read labels. And remember that labels do change over time, and people get caught out because they're using the same product time after time after time, and the label has changed, and they get caught out.
Oh.
So when manufacturers say don't spray on white surfaces, they mean it, and there's a reason for it, and you really need to be careful that you understand things like that. So Fenitrothion, that was a useful product. Malathion, stacked like tomcats, so you knew when you'd been fumigated, and that was one of the things that people objected to when we came out with these new odorless, clean permethrins and deltamethrins. People said, well, we don't feel like we've been fumigating anywhere unless we tell the people to leave the house for 2 days before they come back, because they've been properly serviced then. That was one of the objections that we had when we introduced these new pyrethroids.
I remember Stingray. It had such a heavy, soapy smell. You could smell that for sort of like hours afterwards. And when Stingray went, there was genuine discussions around the table as to whether or not the new Symmetrol that was to replace Stingray, we should make, because it didn't smell, but should we make it smell? Should we add a smell to it? Simply so there was this like cognitive bias for people who thought that, yes, chemical smell equals good job. But there we go. I mean, one of the reasons, we go back to the organophosphates, one of the reasons that we lost a lot of them is because the carbamates and the organophosphates, they both operate on the same mode of action. Basically, they inhibit movement of nerve impulses across the synapse, but whereas generally speaking the carbamates do so and are metabolized by most bodies, the organophosphates are less likely to metabolize because they tend to be more persistent. So a lot of these would be very effective, but they had a bioaccumulative effect in animals, and not so much of a problem for the people you were spraying it around because their exposure was limited and they were made, but for the operators it could become a problem. And certainly there was a big issue with farmers who used a lot of organophosphates for things like sheep dip over years and years of exposure to organophosphates, getting really bad tremors, and I think that was one of the sort of like the drivers to start removing a lot of the organophosphates from the market, was this realization that they build up in tissues and they take a long time to break down and move out, and they were causing damage to the operators. So sometimes these removals are for our benefit as well, lose good stuff, but for a good reason.
Well, there was an issue, wasn't there, with the organophosphates, that if you were using them, you had to have regular blood tests which was, that was a real turn-off for technicians, and a lot of companies and local authorities say we're going to get rid of these things because we're it's disturbing having to have our technicians have regular blood tests. So that was one of the drivers to get rid of them in the first place.
Absolutely, and it's I was about to say there. I've absolutely lost it, but Sean's got his thinking face on, so I know there's a good question coming. Well, I try and remember what mine was.
Do you, like, looking back now on when you first started in your early days of using chemicals that would melt plastic, like, if they give you those chemicals today with the PPE that you had in those days, would you have been happy using them now? Because I'm guessing, and this is just a guess from me, that our masks, our gloves, our suits, Tyvek suits and that have come on leaps and bounds. And it seems like the potency of our chemicals is dropping whilst the PPE is increasing in quality. So did you feel safe? Like, looking back now, do you think you were safe? And did you feel safe at the time using them?
Yes, probably because you didn't know any better. But yeah, I mean, the fact that particular product melted plastic was more to do with the formulation. It wasn't to do with the actual active ingredients. It was just that, the oils and the various other plasticizers that were in that product were added to make it work. And I think that's one area where pest controllers need to really learn a bit more about their products, about the importance of formulation. I mean, I did a lot of work when I was with Welcome about the effect on permethrin and deltamethrin of the formulation. Because if you've got sublethal doses of these chemicals around the place, insects will feel them and they will be repelled by them. And the way you overcome that is you make sure that as soon as they touch that insecticide, they pick up a lethal dose. And the way you do that is to have particulate formulations like dusts or suspension concentrates, etc., so that you've got little particles of these chemicals, on the surface, which the insects can pick up really easily. But some people don't seem to realize this. And the other thing is the effect of these products on your application gear. A number of times I've done training courses with companies who've got several technicians. I've said, well, okay, go and get your sprayers from your vans. Right, let's see what the flow rate is from just passing water through your various sprayers, and you have half a dozen sprayers, and the variation in flow rates can be incredible. Some are half blocked, others the little nozzles they've got a massive hole, so they pour out, and you say, well, you're trying to follow the directions. And I used to use Ficam W label in these because it was so comprehensive with its information on nozzle sizes, nozzle types, flow rates, all that sort of business. And the impression I get is an awful lot of pest controllers out there have no idea how their application equipment or their formulation affects the effectiveness of the products that they use. They spray and pray, and that's not good enough.
I do that, and I can tell you why. So this is a sort of question for you then. So how do we change that? Because I guess from a pest controller's point of view, you look at the salient points of how much do I put in the jar, how much I put in the sprayer, how much water do I add, and when I spray it, will it kill what it needs to kill? So bed bugs or fleas or whatever it is, you go 25 or 50 mil on your first spray, your second spray. But we're no real, and I know Al does training on formulations now, but the truth is, it's fucking boring, isn't it? And for most people, it probably goes through their head. No, it's true. It's absolutely true. No one cares whether it's an emulsion or a suspension or whatever it is. They just care whether it works. So as an industry, how do we get people to understand that then?
Get them all to do PA2 which is pesticide application courses which are done by people using plant protection products, using handheld sprayers. It's a full day. It's very detailed, but you'll have a much better idea about how your products that you're using actually work and why that one failed or that one failed. And it could be down because the product's rubbish. It could be down to the fact that you don't understand how it works through your sprayer and why it works.
Down to the fact that you're rubbish.
Listen, I tell the lads all the time, if we have a failure, honestly, our mindset is if we have a failure, if it's bed bugs or fleas or whatever it is when we talk about spraying, I guarantee you it's because you haven't been thorough enough. That's our whole mindset. We haven't been thorough enough. You haven't pulled something out. You haven't dragged something back. You haven't taken the kickboard off. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. But would there be a way of having, I don't know, maybe it's for one of the, he has a good idea. One of the, I see Dr. Matt doing talks on insects and things like that. Maybe some sort of toolbox talk, little talks on products. Maybe this could be something for the distributors. This is a good product for these circumstances, but I don't think they would do that because they'll just say this is a good product for fleas because they just want to sell, don't they?
Well,
I'll tell you what.
Yeah, the manufacturers will obviously want to promote their products as the best in all circumstances, which isn't true. But the suppliers, the distributors, the guys in between them and the technicians, it's in their interest to sell, to make sure that you know what product is best for which insects. I mean, Ficam, fantastic against Hymenoptera, crap against cockroaches, but you wouldn't read, if you read the F, or was it Bayer, eventually their advertising, it's great against everything. No, against that insect, you ought to be using that product or that product, but not that one. And that's down to the integrity of the supplier. So, yeah, I would agree, yes. But also, I think there should be little tech talks about why is it that do you know what the flow rate of your sprayer is?
No.
Sorry?
I did have that talk. I did get that when I was doing my consultancy. I put together a very comprehensive, and some. I know that there are some people in this chat right now who attended this course, and I talked about pressure, tank pressure versus nozzle pressure versus droplet size. Even getting so down to the nitty gritty is how tall you are and the length of your stride and how fast you move will affect the amount of material you put down. And the reason I ultimately stopped doing that course is because it was there, it was clearly advertised. Nobody wanted to go on it. Nobody wanted to know. So back to this sort of like economies of demand. Although it's something that everyone should know, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I put the courses on, and they were often, I'd get 2 or 3 people on it, and just Jason Bird says just double up on whatever double up on whatever the label says, it'll sort it. Correct. In the same way that if you wanted to kill a cockroach, you could drop a hand grenade into the kitchen and it will probably do a good job, but you're going to cause a lot of collateral damage as you go along, and it's going to be expensive. You can double up, but you're basically using twice as much material as you need to, so you're wasting money. I'm going to get on a soapbox in a minute here. I think Ian's going to join me up there. And this is maybe not the conversation, like the direction this conversation could go, but it's all about sort of like it's all about educating yourself. And I know that there are so many courses out there, either by the independents or by the trade associations or even by the suppliers, that get dropped every year because people just don't utilize them.
I think pest control should ask them. They should ask themselves, "Am I a professional or not?" And a professional should be concerned about these things.
I agree.
When I ran these courses on application equipment, when I asked the technicians to bring out their sprayers, the variety of sprayers was incredible, and most of them had little garden sprayers. with the wrong type of nozzle for the insecticides that they were using. Do people realize the importance of having a flat fan nozzle, for instance, which is designed to put insecticide down on the places that we want to put it down? Whereas if they have a little plant protection product sprayer,
A round nozzle, yeah.
It has a completely different nozzle, which doesn't do as good a job for what we want. So,
I mean, coming into the last 20 minutes of this, what would be, and sorry, Clive makes a really good point here before I move on to my question, which is there's no better investment than investing in yourself and improving in your knowledge and experience.
Absolutely.
I couldn't agree more with that. So with that in mind, from your 5 decades of seeing the world of pest management change, what would be the number one bit of advice you gave to pest controllers today, especially pest controllers who maybe have only been in pest management for 5 or 6 years, and so what they're experiencing right now to them is new and novel and feels kind of personal to them, like an attack on our industry. So what would be the advice that you gave from all of your experience to the pest controllers today, to take to heart?
How long have you got? Read the label and ask, why is that phrase? What does that mean? And ask people who should know, like your supplier. Or if you go to Pest Tech or Pest Techs, go to the manufacturer and say, why is that label got that written on it? What does that mean? I was saying, keep multi-spray off light-colored surfaces. Why does it say that? Because it stains them bright yellow. That's why. But it's not what you can say on a label, But so understand your products, read the label, and ask questions. Always ask questions. I mean, asking people like Lex, for instance, with all his knowledge, go to these exhibitions, go to the workshops, ask people who are there, why is this the case? Keep an open mind, be prepared to keep on learning day after day.
I'd cover that and say, ask the right people, because a lot of the times, and you see people, I see it on the forums all the time, a question is asked, and sometimes the answers that you get are not necessarily the answers that are correct, but so ask questions, but make sure that you are asking them of the right people, so you get to the right answer at the end of the day. Otherwise you'll end up in an echo chamber where you just end up compounding a falsehood.
The man down the pub,
yeah, exactly. So here's the thing for you, and I don't want this to. We've had a couple of conversations lately centering around before we came on the show tonight. Iain was talking about running a business and pest control, etc., etc. And I don't want this to be beating up the people at the bottom. I would rather it be a helpful thing for them. But Clive says, I think Sean would agree with you, Iain, that pest control businesses need to pivot and adapt. So obviously when you're in the NPTA, so a lot of different businesses doing a lot of different things, good and bad. In terms of running a successful business or being better in business or whatever it is, if you want to sit down with some of the smaller companies who are maybe living a bit more hand to mouth, etc., what would you say to them? What would you go about how would you go about that conversation with them?
I think looking at the people that I've seen make successes of themselves, they've come from other businesses which they've developed themselves. So having business knowledge is a vital part of pest control. And I there's lots of people out there who could do the pest control very well, but they haven't really got a clue when it comes to running a business, about making a profit, pricing for profit, advertising, marketing, all these sorts of things. And that needs to be, they need to be learning that alongside the techniques and the technicalities of pest control. And it's a vital part. If you're going to rely on running your own business, you need to know what you're doing. And maybe there will be places near you where you can learn about how do I run a business. There are, I'm sure there are organizations out there, but it should be perhaps something that the associations can focus more on themselves, running business courses. And I know it's boring as hell, but at the end of the day, it's what puts the money in your pocket and the food on your table and pays for your house. So it's a vital part of pest control, the boring bit, the accountancy, and they'll say pricing what you're worth, not what him down the road does.
Yeah,
how obvious was that when we did the wasp nest thing? How did you come up with your pricing? And everyone said the same thing. I looked at what my competitors were charging, and I charged 10% less.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone does it, and they go out of business. Yeah.
So I think we have in our industry a lot, and I mean a lot of phenomenally smart people and technicians. You only have to look. They can presented with a complex 4-dimensional problem, and by that I literally mean 4-dimensional, because you're having to deal with the structure and then be able to envision how it's changing over time and how you wish to make it change. And so that takes a huge amount of mental gymnastics to be able to do. So I have no doubt that the people in our industry are tremendously smart. But that's at solving that problem. We have, I think, a bigger problem, which is when it then comes to the business management. We have great technicians, but a lot of companies, I think, if you were to honestly ask yourself, are not great business people, because it doesn't seem to sort of marry up. And forgive me for saying so, I think we need to focus on that. We need help with that, I think, because we could do a lot better. We could charge a lot more. We could elevate our entire industries, just so long as people understood that they knew what they were worth. And they're worth more than 10% less than the guy down the street, categorically and without a doubt.
Yeah. I've got a gas engineering company which I use every year, and they just do this. They come across as being so professional. They're more expensive than most of the others around here, but they do things like they send you an email saying, "Don't forget, you got this. Our technician Sam is coming tomorrow, and he will give you a ring when he's finished his last job. He should be at this time, but you'll give him a couple of half an hour each way, and then he arrives. He's smartly dressed. He's shaven properly. He's clean. He takes he's got all his gear with him. He doesn't have to ask to borrow your ladder or anything like this, and he acts as a professional. And but you get these guys, unfortunately, who turn up in their shorts and their t-shirts, and they don't bother to put on a bee suit or anything when they're doing a wasp nest. I mean, I always used to put on my bee suit every single time, because you have to do a bit of a play acting, don't you? Madam, go inside, close all the windows, take your children, close the doors, don't come out until it's a simple little thing. And it could have been done puff, puff. But, you got to give them value for money. That's a key thing. So, I've got to go up into the loft space. I probably won't go walking over your thick layer of insulation because it's not safe for me, but I'll have a look. Do you have any bats? You don't. Okay, you can tick that off. That you've done your environmental risk assessment. You've got around. You've looked for bat shit on the window ledges. So you can so you do all of these things. It's not just a puff puff. Thank you, ma'am. £100, please. You've got to give them value for money. So you've got to play a bit of play acting, but do it properly, professionally.
And so that's, PPE serves two purposes there. It keeps you safe, and it looks, Hugh says that service is a show, so put one on. And I think that's very good, especially when some of what we do, you might consider it sort of like, for us, it is just so simple, and I think that's the trap that we run into. Let's say putting down cockroach gel for controlling cockroaches in a kitchen. It's a simple job. We know exactly what to do. We've got our micro applicator. We've got a bit. We know we're going to put it here, here, and here. It's an easy job. So, but in reality, the person looking in on this, you've got this magical chemical gun, and what are you doing with it? So it's all part of, for them. It's all part of the mystery and the service that they've bought is a professional that's come in with these tools, with these abilities. The last thing they want you to come in is just come in and like a squirt gun, be like, just disappear off.
That's it.
Yeah.
Make them feel that they couldn't have done this themselves. Yeah. They couldn't have gone to, the local store and have bought stuff, because that's what they feel. If you're charging decent money, and they feel that I could have done that. That's not good.
Yeah. And what your showmanship does is it's so there's three things. It's knowledge, skill, and behavior, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's your behavior helps to tell people that skill and that knowledge. So as you say, presentation is a large part of that, elucidating your knowledge and skill through your behaviors. Right, so we've said the one thing that you would advise everyone to do. Let's take this down to the end, which is two last questions from us, and the next question would be, what would be the one thing on the flip side of that you'd like to stop all pest controllers doing? When you were in the NPTA, what was your biggest bugbear? What would you like to see pest controllers just stop doing now?
Moaning. Because they've taken away a favoured product that you've been using for years. There'll be good reasons why a product is no longer available. Stop focusing on what your competitors are doing all the time. Focus on what you can do, the value that you can bring to the business. And as Sean said, not just finding out, the competitor down there is charging so much, and I'll do it for cheaper. That's the wrong way to do it. So, the hardest job I ever had in the industry was trying to sell products to pest controllers. I'd walk in the door and the first thing they'd say is, well, what discount do I get? And then they complain about the same thing happens to them from their customers.
I say this is my number one thing, Ian. It absolutely boils my piss. All I see is people complaining about, they didn't want to pay, and they're not understanding, and then the next post they put on Facebook is, where's the best place for cheap rat traps?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, whatever.
We got some comments just coming through in the chat. If I didn't moan, I wouldn't have anything to say.
So there's two questions. One of them is from Hugh, and you can pick the one that you want. Oh no, you can't. I'm going to give them both. What is the one thing we should be talking about but are not?
How AI can help the industry.
Oh. Second person.
I like that. Yeah.
I don't want to sound disrespectful when I say this, Ian, but it's very interesting that it's two of the older guys who are leaving the industry, but were sort of headstrong at one point, who are telling us to look at this, and we're kind of probably not, are we?
Well, when things like mobile phones revolutionized the industry. I mean, when I was at Stockport, Peter Cox, we had to tell our technicians, 4 o'clock, ring in at 4 o'clock, and we can tell you, where you can go tomorrow. You don't do that anymore. You don't have to. You can download an app onto your phone, which will tell you the most efficient way around a route that you've been given. I'm hoping that all people are using that sort of app now. So if you put a load of jobs on top of your contract work, you can work out the most efficient way to go around that next day. Things like this, things like your Facebook discussions, that's all useful stuff. Make the use of it. Ask questions. You can ask questions of people you were never able to ask questions of. Go to all the opportunities you can. Go to workshops, talks. Make your suppliers work for you. So talk to them and ask them awkward questions. Why is this on the label? Why do we have to do that? All these sorts of things. Don't just go for discounts from them. You know, they're worth a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the last question, if you don't mind, Al, is
Why don't I mind?
tell
Hang
us
on, what are we
about
doing?
one of the biggest mess ups or the funniest things that you've seen happen whilst you are in pest control.
Oh, all right. I was working for a company called Laysons. You'd have to have been in the company into the industry for a long time, and we bought out another company that the guy was retiring, and he had a load of these old style chemicals. We weren't buying the company for that. We were buying it for the customer list. But one of the products which he had, which was being supported through the COPR, was grey squirrel bait made of warfarin. And we had a director of the company who was in charge of making the products. And this recipe involved technical warfarin, water, heat, and natural rubber. And the idea was you had to raise the temperature of this and mix everything together as you raise the temperature. Now, we had a fume cupboard in which he was supposed to do this, but it was a nice sunny day. So he went outside into the yard with his baby belling, and he put in the right sort of mix of warfarin and water, put in the dye, and he was putting in the natural rubber. And I didn't see how he started off, but I went out, halfway through the process, and because it was a nice hot sunny day, he was stripped to the waist, wearing shorts, and his arm was red up to the elbow.
Vulcanizing himself.
Yes, because the wooden spoon he was using to mix it wasn't quite long enough. And I sort of went, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he said, "It's only warfarin." Well, he went to hospital because he was leaking blood from every orifice, from his eyes, his ears, his nose, his mouth, and all the other orifices. He very nearly died, and I think he's one of the very few people in the industry that have ever got that close to dying from anticoagulant poisoning. And it ruined his liver. He was never able to drink alcohol again. So, he didn't read the label properly, and he got himself into a lot of trouble. So that was the worst thing I ever saw doing.
The understatement of the century. He got into a spot of bother when he started to melt out of his eyes, ears, and ass. That definitely, I think, qualifies as a snafu, I believe. Lordy, that's...
Hang on 1 second. We're going to run out of time here, but I've been sent another one that says, "What's the SAS story?"
When I was working for Welcome, we were approached by the people, RAMC, that was it, Royal Army Medical Corps, and they had a couple of problems with jungle training in Belize. They had little sandflies there which transmit this disease called leptospirosis, which cause great, huge tropical ulcers. And
leishmaniasis.
Leishmaniasis, sorry, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, leptospirosis, that's a different thing, isn't it? Leishmaniasis, well done. These sandflies are small, they can get through mosquito nets, okay? So they were biting people and transmitting this disease. So they wanted something that would solve that problem. And they also wanted an odorless repellent, insect repellent, so that people like the SAS could sneak up on unsuspecting enemies, sentries, etc., and not be smelt on the way, because the only other insect repellents available were DEET and DMP, which stink, to high heaven. So we got, me and my colleague had to go down to the SAS headquarters in Hereford and mix up mosquito nets and uniforms, dip them in permethrin, basically. The thing with, we had to stay overnight because it was such a long drive back. We got to stay in the officers' mess, and you'd expect the officers' mess to be sort of special, and it was so Spartan. I was given a cell with a single bed with a very thin mattress and one blanket, and I was freezing. And I thought these guys must be really tough, they can last with only one blanket. Goodness me. So this was shortly after we'd seen the SAS storm the Iranian embassy in London. So we knew all about these guys, and they did not look like military. They just looked like sort of football hooligans. So we kept away from them. I left the lab shortly after that, so I didn't follow up on the field trial in Belize. And it wasn't for about 20 years later until we had a reunion that we found out it was fantastically successful. And it was from that moment on that mosquito nets started to be treated with insecticides, permethrin in particular. And then that's now the standard way that malaria is treated in the world. And so we were the first people to put that insecticide onto mosquito nets. And then jungle uniforms for both the British Army and the US Army now come as standard, treated with deltamethrin. So, that's my small contribution to public health. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time.
It's really interesting, the whole bed net thing, especially seeing as permethrin was so revolutionary for bed nets, because it wasn't just killing the mosquitoes that landed on it, but because permethrin is exciter repellent, it meant that even bed nets that had rips in was still effective at repelling mosquitoes, and that was the real excitement. It meant that you could have a hole, you could have a tear, which normally would have made that net totally unusable, but now it still offered a modicum of protection as mosquitoes refused to sort of like get around this little bubble of excitory interference. Fish for London asks, how does it not wash out? It does. Like a lot of these that you have, like I think at my last check it's like a dozen or so washes before they have to be re-dipped or something like that.
And they've actually got a system now where they can inject the deltamethrin directly into the fibers, so they don't need to be washed out. But it raises the whole issue of repellency from pyrethroids. It's a common feature of all the pyrethroids, the residual ones and the non-residual ones, which can be of great use, such as the malaria and mosquito nets. But in other situations where perhaps you've got a permethrin-based dust which you're using against wasps, and the dust is a bit heavy and it doesn't travel very far, you're going to get, at the extremes, you're going to get low levels of permethrin which repel the wasps and therefore callbacks. Now, I don't know, could that be one of the problems that people have got at the moment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Categorically. But yes, there's a couple of comments coming just before we get to our last three, from Clive and from Martin, saying thank you so much for your time, Iain, and your help in my own journey, as it's always a pleasure to listen to what you have to say. So that was from Clive, and Martin says it's really nice to hear you're still blooming. Many thanks for your time and advice. And a little bit earlier on we had Hugh, thank you as well. So it's suffice to say that I think you have affected a lot of people in your time at the NPTA, and I think probably one of the funny things I saw is when you left the NPTA, and you think most people retire with grace. No, you were straight onto the Facebook forums to tell everyone to keep telling everyone how it is and what they should be doing. So I'm still very grateful for seeing your little bits of advice cropping up on there.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
It's all right.
Shall I go first, Lex?
Last 3 questions. I'll go first. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast?
Yes. Thank you. Yes.
Not as scary as it looks.
No. You get the opportunity to have a rant, so it's
it's a soapbox for all to enjoy. Lovely stuff.
Go on then, give us a shameless plug. If you want to go into plug a product or a service or anything like that you think deserves it.
I'm currently doing voluntary work with Citizens Advice, the local Citizens Advice, and their website is absolutely fantastic for all sorts of things. And I was just looking the other day at small claims courts, how you go about applying for them, how much they cost. And it's all there on the Citizens Advice website, and it's citizensadvice, all one word, .org.uk. And if you want to know what benefits you could have when you're struggling, if you set up a business and you're struggling to get enough money coming in, you might be eligible for universal credit, for instance. So you could get help that way. Use your Citizens Advice people. They are very knowledgeable, and as I say, this website is full of information which might be of use to you.
There we go. And for those who are interested, who are either listening back or live now, I've just put the link to that in the chat. So www.citizensadvice.org.uk, and have a look through that. That's a really great plug. I'm loving that. So from the sounds of things, you have listened to a couple of these podcasts before, so you're familiar with what this last question may be. Who would you like to see in the chair next?
Oh dear. There's a guy called Mike Flynn, who was the owner of Alpha Pest Control, who I worked for as I cruised into retirement. And he's a guy that I've known for many years. And he is full of stories. So if you want a storyteller, he could keep you rooted to your chair. He's full of information.
There you go. Definitely Clive seems to remember him. Oh yes.
Yes.
So there we go. I hope Hugh, you made a note of that. I'll see if we can't reach out and contact him. Right, I think that's us done for the evening. This is an hour and a half, and it's absolutely flown by. So once again, thank you ever so much for donating a Friday evening to us. It's most appreciated. And who have we got next week? Do you know, Sean?
We have stand by. I'll tell you now. It is. We have
Charlie.
Martin. Charlie Martin. That's exactly who we have. Charlie Martin. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you under the bus then.
I'm definitely not the person to ask who's on next week, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. Never mind on Friday. Yeah, Charlie Martin's with us next week, and it should be an interesting little chat.
Perfect. So, in which case, Ian, thank you ever so much, and for everyone listening, see you next Friday. So, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you then.
See you.
Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.